You're listening to Health Innovators, a podcast and video show about the leaders, influencers, and early adopters who are shaping the future of healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. Roxie Mooney. Welcome back to the show, Health Innovators. On today's episode, I'm sitting down with Sujay Kumar, who is the co-founder and co-CEO of Lilu. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
It is good to have you here. So let's start off, like I do every episode, with telling our audience a little bit about your background and what you've been innovating these days.
Absolutely. So, a quick intro. I'm like you mentioned, I'm Sujay, the co-founder and CEO of Lilu. We're a women's health company building tech products to make postpartum care more comfortable, efficient, and pain-free. My background is in electrical engineering. I hail from India. I did my undergrad back home and moved to the US to pursue my master's at the University of Pennsylvania, which is where sort of my world took a 180, and we decided to sort of set foot on this mission to start and innovate in the women's health, specifically in the maternal health space. Again, I can dive further into it, but I'll take a step back there.
Yeah. So what are you innovating these days?
Yeah, so we're currently building two amazing product lines, complementary product lines. The first one is a breast pump. So we're building a better breast pump. We're calling it the Omni. It is a wearable breast pump, so it fits inside the bra that integrates our patented breast massage technology to help moms pump up to 50% more milk. And the second product that we're working on, we're calling it the MilkSense Lactation System, which includes a smart sensor technology and a mobile app that basically leverages AI to help moms track their breastfeeding, breast pumping, and bottle feeding sessions, and provides them with unprecedented insights, hyper-personalized care to help make sure that they understand their lactation, but also their well-being as well.
So now that we've got context, how in the world did you end up dedicating your career in this season to solving this problem around women's health and specifically around breastfeeding?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think it really goes back to my childhood. I'm curious, I'm hopeful, and I think all of this is a product of how I grew up, my childhood environment. I was born into a family that has always practiced feminist ideologies, but again, I come from India, so I was unfortunately also born into a society that was laden with generations of systemic gender biases, inequalities. It's again like it's no hyperbole to say that there's gender inequality and bias in every single facet of a woman's life, no matter where they are, unfortunately. And so to me, that affected me profoundly growing up. And so I've always, for as long as I can remember, built and like tinkered with technologies, innovations, to sort of improve people's lives, but then became more focused on innovating in women's health, women's lives in general. Right after I graduated from my undergrad, I actually started a non-profit called Jyoti back home in India, in the city of Hyderabad, where I'm from, to help survivors of harassment and rape. Basically provide them with a platform to voice their complaints and grievances anonymously, provide them safe spaces, workshops around self-defense, basically providing them with the care that they needed after, they've gone through this tremendously hard journey. And yeah, I ran that for about a couple of years.
Wow.
It was extremely fulfilling, but I also sort of realized in that moment that in order for me to sort of excel at this and do the best I can, I needed to upskill myself. Like I was sort of the bottleneck at the end of the day in sort of growing this, and so I wanted to do that. I wanted to upskill, so I moved to the US to pursue my master's at UPenn. Which is where I met my co-founder Adriana, who's an amazing person, by the way, and she was pursuing her master's as well at that time in product design. And she was the one that actually mentioned this idea of looking into building a better breast pump. And sort of, again, we got to talking, realized, discovered our mutual passion for women's health and innovating in like technology and like health tech in general. And we realized we also had similar experiences of seeing a lot of our friends and family struggling to make that transition to early parenthood work, early motherhood specifically work. We all understand and know the benefits of breastfeeding, Moms would set in this journey, really, really fulfilling but incredibly difficult journey of breastfeeding, with the goal to successfully breastfeed for a year, which is sort of the recommended time by the WHO and CDC. But due to various different issues and problems that come about, they are not even able to make it past the halfway mark, which is like 6 months. I think around 75% of moms stop exclusively breastfeeding within just 6 months, which is a staggering number. So we decided to dig a little bit deeper, and we spoke to hundreds of moms and discovered how outdated this landscape has been for the last 30,
Mm.
40 years now, mental health in general. It was funny, if you look at the breast pump device that exists today, and you look at how the very first patent for the breast pump was in 1940s, it looks virtually identical. And how can, like, you cannot say that about any other technology today, right? Like, you see such
Very
advancements
rare.
in
Yeah.
everything around you. And so for us, like, we took a step back there and we realized, okay, whoa, like, this is serious. Like, it's not just a class project for us anymore. Like, we really need to dig it a little bit deeper. So yeah, I mean, we set foot on that mission while we were still students. Honestly, we started creating these prototypes. We started testing them with moms, and we had this incredibly supportive mommy community. Moms who would drive a couple of hours just to come give us their feedback on these, like, Frankenstein. That's what we call them, Frankenstein-looking prototypes.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and yeah, for us, like, I think it was a no-brainer. Like, getting started with Lilu, I remember we graduated 16th May 2016, and 17th May 2016 is when we incorporated the company and sort of
Wow,
launched in
that's
this mission. Yeah.
great. So, what has that journey been like since 2017? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as you hear sort of similar tones from every entrepreneur, right? Like, it's a lot of ups and downs, right? Like, if anybody comes and tells you that, oh, like, it's been glorious, it's all been amazing, like,
Yeah.
they're lying, right? Like,
Yep.
it's been a lot of amazing milestones, but at the same time, a lot of hurdles and challenges that we've had to cross. First amazing milestone is that, hey, like, we already have one product in the market. Like, we launched a physical product that, we created ourselves. Like, I put together with my own hands, and yeah, like, launched it. And, like, to hear from our customers, from moms that were changing their lives, making it for like, they're better. Like, moms have called this product a breastfeeding savior, a lifesaver. Moms of premature babies, say that they couldn't, like, didn't realize that they could continue breastfeeding or breast pumping, and our product really helped them save that. So that was very fulfilling. But at the same time, on the challenge side of things, again, how long do we have, right? Like, I can just sort of go on and on. But
Right, right,
um,
exactly.
but it was interesting for us. Like, I guess I'll just very quickly, like, just give you the headlines, right? Like, first, right off the bat, like, it was a new industry, right? Like I said, it was very nascent. Not a lot had gone into maternal health in general. So for us, as underrepresented founders, like, both my co-founder and I are immigrants, and in this industry that's been void of innovation for so long, hasn't seen any sort of exits in several decades now, was really challenging,
Yep.
both from an operational perspective, but also for us from a funding perspective. Convincing venture capitalists that there is a big enough market there, that that we are the right team to sort of innovate and, like, bring these new technologies to the market, I think was a big challenge. And then, it's been a lot of other fun things as well. We launched as a physical product, like, hardware company. So the challenges along manufacturing, my co-founder and I had this wonderful opportunity to spend 2 years in Shenzhen, China, working on our product, like, product development. Um, yeah. So again, like, a lot of amazing, amazing challenges that we've overcome. And then on the personal front, like, there's also been a lot, like, immigration challenges. I'm still on my visa. I've been rejected visa a couple of times. I've been stuck in India for a couple of years during the pandemic,
Mm,
because of visa struggles.
yeah.
We had shipping delays. We had so many different things that we overcame. And, like, I think that's what it means to be a founder and an entrepreneur, right? Like, it's perseverance. That's what gets you through the finish line at the end of the day. Yeah, resilience and perseverance. I think that's what in 2 words, if I had to sort of describe our journey in the last 8 years, like, those would be the 2 words.
Sure. My goodness, there's so much to unpack there. So, the first thing I, want to say is that, I work with hundreds of innovators, and the funding journey is often a struggle. And these are sometimes with entrepreneurs who are a lot more experienced in business. Um, born in the U.S. um, and um, and also, um, a number of other factors that could be working in their favor, and they're still struggling with the funding journey. So let's kind of unpack, how did, two students graduating from their master's program even get from I'm going to start a business to I literally have enough resources that I have a physical product that I'm able to sell into the marketplace?
Yeah, honestly, yeah, like you're right. It's been quite a challenge, right? Especially raising funding. It's never been easy, but it's also got to do a lot with the fluid, like how fluid the market is. Like, we've all seen how, there was a crisis, like financial crisis in the last couple of years. And that there was a similar case like earlier in 2017 or 2018, I believe. So it's always been like ups and downs with the
Yeah.
industry in general. But also, like you mentioned, right? Like us as underrepresented founders, I always often say this. I don't know if I can curse on the show, but like I'll try not to and like keep it kosher. But yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship in general is a very tough journey for everybody. But for immigrant founders, it's like we have to go through a whole mile of crap before we can get to the starting point. And
Yeah.
then we're on an even playing field with the rest of the entrepreneurs. Um, but yeah, so for us, like we've had to be very resourceful when it comes to sort of funding the company, right? Like
Yeah.
we've relied very heavily on grant funding. So we
Mhm.
raised around 1.3 million in pre-seed funding from angels and VCs and accelerator programs, but we've raised also around 1.5 million in funding from grants and awards. So right off the bat, the first few
Huge.
years when we were still yeah, when we
Yeah.
were still scrappy. Obviously now we have to manage a team. We have like a team
Mhm.
of 10 people. Back then, like it was just like the two of us or the three of us that got
Yeah.
started on this journey. And so we were scrappy and we were basically doing everything. So for us, like we kept our heads above water and also helped us like really get the word of our company out there by attending as many of these pitch events as possible, right? Like we would just apply to this pitch event, that pitch event, and like, go on stage and pitch Lilu. And I think it's also because we're truly solving a real problem out there. And like we were, again, we'd shown that we are the right team to do it. Like we had amazing proven technology to do it. So a
Yeah.
lot of times people recognize the value in what we were building. So we would win a ton of these pitch competitions and awards that would give us like, 50K here, 50K there to, again,
Mhm.
like, help us like continue pushing that line. But yeah, I mean, I think we've also, I must say, have been very fortunate to have such supportive investors as well. We've had some amazing angels who came on board early on. Again, I don't want to start naming them because it's gonna
Sure.
go
Sure.
get endless. Um, but yeah, I think we have some incredible investors, incredible VCs that came on board as well, and not to forget also some amazing advisors. Like our board of advisors is so stacked, and they're all such amazing people who would be willing to get on a call with us every single week just to go over our updates, like help us with some key challenges, provide
Mhm.
us with resources, make those right connections and introductions.
Yep.
Yeah, again, like it's really about how you see it, right? Like you can be sad about how there's not enough funding and like and quit, or you can be resourceful, go out there and like apply for these grants that exist. Another, again, like I should also thank the US government for having amazing programs like the SBIR program, which again, like we've won the phase one award, the phase two award, and we continue to receive more support from the National Science Foundation
Yeah.
as well through the SBIR program. So again, like having all of those resources in place, like I think resources exist. It's really a matter of like how willing are you to get out of your cocoon to go out there and like look for these resources and be, again, like be resourceful more than anything else in sort of
Yeah.
keeping your company afloat during the difficult times.
It's interesting, Sujay, because you just rattled off, I swear, I think like 30 or 40 things.
Sure.
And what I hear, if I kind of think of like what's an overarching theme is this
Hmm.
hunger, of doing all the things, and
Yeah.
maybe some growth hacking, some
Sure.
being out of college not that long, you still have
Yeah.
this I'm writing a paper kind of mindset. And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
maybe that puts you in a better position to, complete the SBI application, because I come across people that are like, there's too much paperwork in grants. I'm not going to fool with that. Or
Yeah.
I don't know how to, write, an SBIR application. All of these things that might have been barriers or obstacles where other people have
Yeah.
redirected in other places, where it seems like you and your co-founder, co-CEO have said, like, no, we're
Yeah.
going to roll up our sleeves and do it.
Yeah, you're right. I think, yeah, perhaps it lends to our attitude, right? You're right. I think we were young and like we were very energetic back in the day, and like we had this attitude of like let's go get this done. We still
Yeah.
do, obviously, but I think we've also learned a lot of things along the way, right? Like I think there are some I wouldn't say misconceptions, but like I would just say like things that I would like to share, for instance, right? Like I think specifically what you mentioned, a lot of times. And this is again, it came after a lot of like struggles ourselves, and like we learned it the hard way that you don't really have to do everything yourself, right? Like it's not about having all the answers yourself. It's
Yeah.
about surrounding yourself with the right people, right? Like with the right team, with the right mentors, with the right investors, with the right advisors who
Yeah.
can sort of guide you along the path, right? Like grant writing again, for instance, right? Like you don't really have to do all of that yourself. There are people out there that are basically doing this. There are grant writers, like grant writing agencies that do this. This is their bread and butter, right? Like so if you sort of are able to find a grant writer that's like that believes in you and like believes in your mission and is like willing to help you out, like you work with them essentially in like getting it right. Like and a lot of them work as a part like on a success fee, right? Like they don't even charge you up front. They charge you only if you get the grant. And if you don't get the grant, like they're not like this. They have enough skin in the game that they believe you enough that they will do that, right? Like they will spend
Sure.
a month of their time in just doing this essentially. So and there are similar sort of programs in place for so many other opportunities as well, right? Like some amazing accelerator programs for hardware, like we went through hacks. So there are a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
Like when you're in this journey that you learn, that again, like if you plan on doing everything yourself, right? Like you're probably going to require like 48 hours in a day. But in practicality, that doesn't work out, right? Like it's not possible. So
Yeah.
yeah, for us, like the most important learning has been that like you have to build that circle of trust, and you have to sort of pick the people that you want to bring into the circle, and again, like that's very important in running a
Sure.
good company successfully.
Yeah, definitely. So I know that you also have done some crowdfunding. So let's talk about, share with our audience a little bit
Yes.
about that experience. And as you're doing that,
Yeah.
what makes your company or your product maybe
Yeah.
suitable for a crowdfunding initiative, as
Yeah.
maybe opposed to some other businesses or products?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've done crowdfunding a couple of times in a couple of different ways, right? So there are different types of crowdfunding. There's the straight crowdfunding where you have a product and like you're basically having people pre-order it and then you ship them when the product is ready. And then there's the equity crowdfunding piece where you're basically asking people, everyday common people to come invest in you, and like where they don't have to be, millionaires or like high net worth individuals or like accredited investors to invest in a company. They can invest in a company for as little as $100 on a platform like WeFunder or Republic, right? So there are platforms that exist for this. For us, like I think we've taken that decision of going down the crowdfunding route for a couple of different reasons, like given our at different stages, right? Like so we launched on Kickstarter with the first product in 2019, I believe. And for us, like the reason we launched on Kickstarter was to get that early validation, right? Like we didn't have the product fully ready, but we wanted to know that there is enough demand out there. And also like a major reason to do that is because we were basically carving a new product segment. Like we were creating something that didn't really exist. And we wanted to know ourselves, but also to sort of get that validation to prove to our investors and potential investors that there is a big enough market and people do want this and people will put money where their mouths are and like buy this, right? Like, and it's not just about saying, oh, this is a wonderful product, but like actually go ahead and purchase it. So that was one of the reasons why we launched on Kickstarter. Like we did this pre-order campaign. And again, like for us, it was tricky because moms are not going to be breastfeeding for a year, like more than a year, right? So for us, like typically with like products that launch on Kickstarter, like start shipping maybe a year, 2 years after the campaign. So we had to ship within like 3, 4 months, and like we had to almost be ready with our product development to even like launch the Kickstarter campaign. So that was the first one. The second one, most recently, we wrapped up our equity crowdfunding campaign on WeFunder, and we did that for a more important reason, right? Like I think over the years, since we launched our first product, we've had such incredible support from the mommy community, from our customers, from so many people who always come to us. You know, if I had a penny, every time somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, I wish I had this when I was breastfeeding," I wouldn't even need to fundraise, right?
Right,
So,
right, right.
and for us it was really about like hearing that over and over again, and like it was like light bulbs going off, right? Like that, you know, if people really want to come like support, like offer support and help us in this journey, then you know we should give them an opportunity to also invest in the company, because we are a mission driven company, we are a community driven company. So if we are our back to the community, back to the people, and like they are able to have a say in how we're running this company, that's like there's nothing like it, right? So
Yep.
that's why we launched on
Yeah.
WeFunder, to give that power of investing back to the community, to honestly democratize investing as well, because not
Mm.
enough people understand investing. And like we also really think that our community can benefit from our upside, and the way to do that would be through equity crowdfunding.
I'm just curious when you think about, WeFunder
Hmm.
and democratizing that investment. What's the gender makeup of those investors? Is it
Yeah.
predominantly male because this is a,
Yeah.
FemTech breastfeeding product and it's actual
Yeah.
consumers that would
Hmm.
wish they had it, want it in the future? Or is it
Yeah.
really a little bit more male participation than we might imagine?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So I think again, going back to like Kickstarter, the first time we launched a crowdfunding campaign, like for the product, like you're right. So it ended up, we'd done some research, but we were still hopeful.
Yeah.
But yeah, we real discovered that Kickstarter was predominantly, you know, a male audience, right? So I think around 75% of the platform was men.
Yep.
But again, we also did get support from men, who again, like our
You're a
parents
man
themselves,
running
who are
a
dads
company,
themselves, and
right?
like exactly. So for them, you know, they wanted to do something for their wives, and like you know,
Yep.
this was one way to do that. You know,
Sure.
but at the same time, with equity crowdfunding, that's also another reason, right? Like I talk about democratizing investing, and you know, funding in general, but one of the reasons why we also chose equity crowdfunding is because the VC landscape has also been extremely sort of challenging, and like you know, for the lack of diversification. Like I mean, obviously there are like positive trends right now. You know, everything is on the rise. Like you know, there are more
Mhm.
underrepresented VCs, more female VCs, but it's not enough, right? Like there's like it's still just scratching the surface. And again, not to sort of diss on investors or anything, but the number of times that like my co-founder and I have had to walk into a room, to pitch to a room full of white men in their 50s, like just like about breastfeeding and breast pumping, and the first question that we always get is like, "Oh, why are you a man like doing this sort of right?" Like,
Right.
it's again like, but I wouldn't have to explain myself to a mom who's been there, for instance, right? Like it's
Right.
like, you know, we
Yeah.
saw that trend as well, right? Like every time we would pitch to a female VC or like you know, they would understand it immediately, right?
Mm.
Versus pitching to a male VC who's not a dad, or like who hasn't seen that journey essentially. And so for us, like also like, you know, going to WeFunder was also basically that, right? Like it was enabling more women to come invest like very actively, and like become angel investors themselves.
Mhm.
But also I think enable more men to also show support, right? Like I think, you know, I'm very proud as a man in the women's health space, like a male founder in this space.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
unfortunately, there's not enough of us. Like, I've always sort of tried to rope in a couple more here, a couple more there, to like just like continuing like, you know, this sort of trend of innovating in women's health in general. But but I think there are people, right? Like and they do want to support, they just don't know how. So for us, it was also a platform where we could show them how to do that. That we could show how they don't just have to walk up to us and say we're doing a great job. They can actually, you know, come invest in us and like, you know,
Right.
start this journey as an investor themselves. Um, but yeah, you're right. Like it's still sort of tipped more towards the male audience, but hopefully there are gonna be more female investors on platforms like these as well.
Fascinating. That's really, really fascinating.
Hmm.
Gosh, we could talk about that in itself for hours, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not that you're going to know all of the latest trends about
Hmm.
fintech and postpartum and women's
Yeah.
health, but just share and update what
Yeah.
on these types of trends and how is
Yeah.
it bit different. There seems to be a lot, or there is a lot more buzz
Hmm.
and attention
Yeah.
and investment towards women
Hmm.
health. So how have you seen things evolve from 2017 to now? And then where would you say, like, where we are and where we're going, around
Yeah.
these micro subsegments?
Absolutely. Yeah. You're right. So there's been definitely a huge positive trend, right? Like ever since we started in 2016. And it's funny because the word FemTech, that's such a buzzword now. Everybody recognizes what FemTech is, especially in the investments landscape.
Yeah.
But when we got started, femtech wasn't even a thing, right? Like nobody was talking about femtech,
Right. Yep.
and now it's a vertical that that VCs are deliberately investing in, right? Like they want to invest in that more and more. And again, we're seeing positive trends across the board, right? We're seeing more innovation in maternal health. We're seeing more innovation in menopause, and we're seeing more innovation in fertility. We have such amazing founder friends who are innovating in this space as well. I think a lot of that had to do with us coming together as a community and supporting each other. Like it's funny, like even within the maternal health space, even other companies that are innovating for like in similar spaces as us, doing something similar as us, like we don't even see them as competitors, right? Like yeah, like on paper they are competitors, but we have this very strong sense of community that there is a big enough market that all of us can exist and we can sort of grow this market and like in the forward in the right direction, right? Like, and I
Yeah.
think people started realizing that it's a very strong community, that there are such amazing people innovating in this space. And I think VCs also began to realize that it's not no longer a space that they can neglect. And like we're seeing more and more VC money coming into femtech as well, and like that reflects, right? Like you can see the trends going up. I don't know the exact numbers, but the percentage of investors investing in femtech or women's health in general has gone up. And there are also VCs that are specifically investing only in women's health, right? There were no funds back in the day that was investing
Right.
only in women's health.
Exactly.
So it's that's such a positive change, and like and yeah, more power to such amazing investors who've sort of embarked on this journey, because it's not easy, right? Like for them too, like they're answerable. Like VCs are not just people who get money out of nowhere. Like they get money from their LPs, they have their own investors, and so they're answerable to them. So to take that bold, brave decision of like looking at this very nascent like industry and saying, I'm gonna go put my money in this industry, and like I'm gonna bet on this industry to explore over the next like 5 to 10 years, that
Yeah.
takes a lot of guts and a lot of yeah, like power to do that. So I think I'm glad that there are more supportive people entering this space, but we definitely need a lot more. Right? We hear that so many times, like over and over again. I think VC in general is on the rise, but at the same time, that equity has to go up, and like we're not seeing it grow at the rate that we would like. But at least it's a positive change. Like we're seeing
Yeah.
at least five more companies in the breast pumping industry that have come up in the last 4 or 5 years. Again, when we started, like I said, it was completely deserted. There was nobody that was doing anything.
Yeah.
We're seeing more companies innovating in the hormonal health space when it comes to like female hormones, and that's a segment that's
Yes.
completely misunderstood as well, right? Like not enough. So
Uh,
it's really about like not just about
mm,
innovating with products, but also realizing that this whole industry, women's health in general, needs more education, needs more research, needs more data, and being able to say, like, I'm the one that's going to unlock all of this data. Like, again, more power to all the founders who are taking that brave step and doing that.
yeah.
So, yeah, we need more people, we need more founders, we need more investors, but hopefully with amazing people like yourselves, like influencers and key opinion leaders in this space, talking about this very actively on platforms, on big platforms like TechRun, South by Southwest, all of these big stages, and
Yeah.
more people bringing more awareness to this space, I think is very important and very encouraging.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm grateful for the strides that we've made, but like you said, there's still so much work to be done, and
Yeah,
it is definitely an under innovated market segment, and
100%.
much needed. And women make 80% of the buying decisions, have access
Yeah,
to a lot of disposable income, and so
yeah,
there's the business case that can be made for it, not
yeah,
just social case
yeah.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And it's funny because you're right, right? I think you're 100% right with that number of women making, 80% of the decision makers in every household are like basically women, right? Like, and it's funny that marketers understood that and have been sort of, employing, targeting techniques
Yep.
towards, like
Yep.
specifically towards women in the household. And investors haven't really caught up. So hopefully we're seeing more investors turning into marketers as well. And like, we'll see that upward trend, but a lot more needs to be done. And yeah, I'm just glad
Yeah,
that
I
I'm
mean,
one of
decades ago,
making
we
this small.
were
Yeah.
talking about the she economy, and we were talking about how, even if you were selling and promoting male-oriented products, that they might be the
Hmm.
end user, you might still use women and more female-oriented language, because
Yeah,
they were very likely going to go home and collaborate with their wife on making that purchase decision, or she might
exactly.
that buying decision on their behalf. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, definitely.
100%.
Um, so let's talk about being a co-CEO. That's a topic that we haven't really
Yes.
talked a whole lot about. And
Yeah.
so how has that been for you?
Yeah.
And, how are you, what was the decision of being a co-CEO versus one a CEO and one a president? And how are you dividing those roles and responsibilities and kind of managing that?
Yeah, it's been interesting for sure, right? Like, so Adriana, my co-founder, was the solo CEO, the sole CEO of the company up until 2 years ago. When again, I was the CTO, more on the product side. And again, like I said, I spent 2 years on the ground in Shenzhen, China, working on our product, like working on setting up our supply chain and manufacturing. I think there came a time, obviously, as founders, like we have to wear many different hats, right? So for me, originally, I wore that hat of being that product developer, product designer, and like then to like managing our supply chain. Moved into more of a COO position and like started taking a 30,000 foot view of things.
Yeah.
And then again, I realized that as we're growing the company, as like we're becoming a company that has 10 employees, 20 employees, 50 employees, and more in the future, we also realized that the scale of operations is also growing rapidly and like scaling up rapidly, and we have to wear what we used to wear 10 different hats, and like today we have to wear 100 different hats on a daily basis, like both Adriana and myself, right? So
Yeah.
so we realized, we took that very active decision that it makes sense that both of us work together as co-CEOs, because there's so many things that need to get done. Like there's things on the fundraising front, on the product development front, on the
Yeah.
HR front, on and so we divided our sort of focus at any given point of time. We don't both sort of like implement or work on the same things, but we're definitely well aligned in the overall journey of the company, and we're leading separate sort of divisions. Like for instance, like I'm right now leading fundraising for
Yeah.
the company, and like Adriana is leading product side of things, and we're both coming together to expand the company on the human resources side. So it takes a lot of planning and a lot of implementation to make all these sort of things function together, and we realized that it makes sense for both of us to be at the top and sort of
Yeah.
lead the company together.
Sure. Yeah. It sounds like what you're describing is almost like a strengths based leadership, and you might be wearing 40 or 100 hats in any given day.
Yeah,
As what early stage, entrepreneurs do, but as you're doing that, you recognize I'm really really good at this. This energizes me. This sucks the life out of me. I don't.
exactly.
Yes, I will do
Yeah.
it. I am not really good at it, and you kind of start.
100%. Yeah. It's not even being good at it, right? Like it also really comes down to like I can do it, but like can I do it well enough that like, that we see
Sure.
results, or the results that we need tomorrow or like day after tomorrow. And it's
Right.
realizing your strengths and weaknesses, so that it
Mhm.
also, we've sort of, again, after 8 years of doing this, we also have come to the stage where we can say, oh, like I want to do this or I don't want to do this. It also comes down to a preference, because that affects your mental health, that affects your physical health, and as entrepreneurs, we have to be very mindful of that as well. So, yeah, again, like we took that collective decision together. But you're right. I think I'm glad that we did. Like we're definitely looking healthier than we ever have, and yeah.
So I am switching gears a little bit. I talk about this
Hmm.
probably I don't know, for my listeners, they're probably like, oh my gosh, there she goes again. Like every chance that I can get. One of the things that really struck me when you were talking about, your story early on in our conversation was, being able to collect feedback directly from users really, really,
Yes.
really early on.
Hmm.
How has that, customer feedback or consumer feedback
Yeah.
played a role in both the product as well as your go to market, really
Yeah.
just in anything with successfully getting to where you are today and commercializing. Help us understand how that's fundamentally helped you, hindered you, or maybe
Hmm.
evolved over time.
I'm so grateful for that question. Like, I know you bring this up, and like that is so important. I think one thing that people forget, like they often try to build a product, whereas it's not really like you're not supposed to be concentrating on the product, right? You're supposed to be concentrating on the problem you're solving and whom you're solving it for. And like your customer becomes the most important element of your company. And if you don't listen to your customer at every step of the way, you're losing focus, and like you're not set up to to succeed in that journey or in that mission, right? So
Yeah.
for us, like our customer has always been at the forefront of everything we do. We've always put our customer experience, our customers feedback, in product development, very rightfully, as you mentioned, go to market strategy, which is also a major reason why we're now working on our product number two, or like the evolution of the first product. um, I would call it a mini pivot almost, right? Like, and then that's also from hearing from our customers. So I'll break it down, right? So I think very early on, because it was a physical product like that we launched in the beginning with the massage technology, we had to get a lot of feedback from customers, both qualitative but also quantitative. Like, make sure that because it's such a personal product as well, right? Like, it's a breast pump, and like it's such a personal experience. And if it's not gentle, like the number of times I've heard from moms, and you're a mom yourself, like I don't have to like preach the core and like tell you that they feel like cows when they're breastfeeding or breast pumping, that they feel like they're chained to one place. And again, like now breast pumps are better, like, but the number of times that we've heard from moms about how they would pump in like cockroach infested bathrooms just to make it work at work.
Yep.
um like, for us, the last thing we wanted to do was add to that, right? Like, even if we added like 10 seconds of inconvenience to their existing breastfeeding or breast pumping journey, for us that was a negative thing. So it took us a good 3.5 years of product development just to build a product that we thought was worthy of moms. Like, we beta tested with probably over 300 moms with a physical product. Like, we I'm like, again, be happy to share pictures, but we've gone through over maybe 150 prototype iterations, each time getting feedback from moms, and like, testing it rigorously, making sure that we're addressing even the smallest things. Like, if the button press isn't like, well enough, or like it does there's the light isn't nice enough, or like the sound isn't nice enough, the massage isn't nice enough, or like, oh, I need more massage in this area versus this area. And then, whole set of different problems around like sizing of the bra, because we launched as a pumping bra or a breast pumping accessory. There's so many things that we had to consider, and for all those things, like, because we weren't parents ourselves as well, I think if we took that as a positive, and that we weren't biased in any of the decisions that we took with the product. Like, we let our customers do the talking for us, and like, and tell
Yeah.
us what exactly needs to get done.
Yep.
And B, I think even after we launched the product, like you said, on the business side of things, learning about like what kind of things are working when it comes to marketing, like what's working, what's not working, like what are like our customers resonating with, and also things like, who's our target audience, like, who's our like evangelist customer, like, do we focus on one single sort of customer persona, or like there are six different personas, like do we focus on all of them? I think all of that can only be answered if you're talking to your customer constantly. So for me, it was interesting. Like, yeah, we launched the product, and then I transitioned from leading our product development to sort of leading our customer success division. So I
Yep.
was the one that was talking to all our customers. I was the first line of defense. Leading every live chat that came on our website, like I was the first one to answer, like, and like
Sure.
like our customers will attest to that, right? So I think
Yeah.
that was very important. And then on the slightly longer run, again, going back to go to market strategy and the business model itself, I think we've made some critical decisions along the way that was also very much based on what our customers told us. For instance, like our customers told us that it'd be great if the product is FSA HSA eligible. So that's the first thing that we did. Like we made sure that our product was FSA HSA eligible. Like we applied for that eligibility and like we got that done.
Mm-hmm.
And then making sure that we are able to prove efficacy of the product. So running those rigorous pilots just so that we could make those claims that like there's lab testing, and then there's testing with real moms, and like so that they are confident when they're using our product that it has been tested with other moms rigorously, and like the results sort of speak for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the business model side, again, like right now we're doing this massive pivot. So we launched as an accessory to the breast pump. So we launched it with a product that worked alongside breast pumps to automate breast massage. And the
Yeah.
idea was that we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Like breast pumps already exist. Like moms are already getting their breast pumps for free from insurance. So rather than making having them spend $1,000 out of their pockets just to make breast pumping work, we can develop an accessory that can work alongside these breast pumps and make them better.
Yep.
But then having launched a product and like heard from our customers, we realized that insurance reimbursement was a huge factor for moms, and so that was one of the major reasons why we decided to stop selling the first product, and we're now working on a full-fledged breast pump device, where
Yep.
rather than again if it meant reinventing the wheel, we realized that wheels weren't really good to begin with, so now we're making better wheels, sort of, right? So
Yeah.
I think that improvement was very important. And then also to address like our second product line, the MilkSense product line, we heard from our customers about like their physical problems, but because again, when you're asking those important questions to your customers, that you're so focused on like one thing. One recurring thing that came up on all our conversations with our customers who were using our like physical product was that lactation is also very closely tied to maternal mental health. And like how a lot of moms are struggling with postpartum depression. That is how that's very closely tied to lactation and how they're sort of succeeding their breastfeeding journey. And we realized that our product does fix these physical problems, but it's not really addressing any of those issues around their anxiety or their mental or emotional health.
Yeah.
And that's why we decided to work on our second product, right? So I think at every step of the way, like I said, like we've always put our customers in front of everybody, again, like anybody else. And interestingly, we also had some customers who came and joined our team as well, right? So like being
Brilliant.
early users to coming
Yeah.
back and joining the team, and like that is such a huge boost of confidence for us that they
Mhm.
use the product and now they believe in the mission so much that they want to become a part of the team and and carry this forward in the right direction. So yeah, again,
So how has
customers are everything.
how I love that. I'm so excited to hear you
Yeah,
say that. And to me, that's kind of one of the number one indicators of success is that when you have those values and they're really being played out in the business on day to day. So as we kind of start to wrap up here, one question that
yes,
I have for you is how has that mindset and commitment to that approach
yeah,
interplayed with your investors and advisors? Has there,
yeah,
because if they don't support that strategy and approach,
yeah.
they can see that it's costly, it's taking longer, we need to be able to get to market faster, or you can have people that
Mhm.
you're surrounded with that absolutely understand the true impact of it may be delayed, but
Yeah.
it's going to be more successful. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting, right? So I think, like I said, I think finding the right investor is much like matchmaking or like finding your life partner, right? Like it's very important to see a mutual fit, right? Like it's not just a question of you finding somebody who is willing to like put money in the company, but it's also very much finding a good investor who's adding value to the company and like the team, but also is able to sort of guide you in this like longer path of like where are you going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now,
Mm,
and sort of sit with you in when you're making those critical decisions. So we've had some amazing investors who've been our like most critical advisors as well, right? Like at every step of the way they've stood by us, but at the same time it's always not always been them saying yes to every decision we make, right? Like they have to play the devil's advocate sometimes.
absolutely.
But if again at the end of the day, if your decisions are grounded in how your customer is behaving, what your customer wants, whether or not they're going to pay for a certain thing, or like how much are they going to pay for it, um, and like you're making a sound decision based on that, then there's no reason for your investors to say no on the long front, right? Like, even if they say no now, they're definitely going to come on board and say, okay, like, this, I don't fully agree with this, but I will still support you so that we can test this and like get to a result, right? So I think that's another thing, right? Like as entrepreneurs, like it's like we're always testing. We're never perfect, right? Like we're always like making improvements to the product, like making improvements to the business model, to the company, to the team. And
Absolutely.
it's really about finding those investors who will stick with you in all of those experiments. They may not always agree with you, but they will support you nevertheless. And that's the kind of investor that you want to sort of join your team.
Definitely. And that's one of those things that I also talk about a lot often too is, from an investor and advisor standpoint, like your opinion, although interesting, is irrelevant. Sorry, but like
Yeah,
in many ways, that's just like customer feedback. I mean, you're not
yeah,
talking about one customer, right? Like some rogue customer,
exactly.
but customer voice,
Yeah,
customer feedback should trump personal opinions of, everyone across the board, because it's not
yeah,
about being right. It's about being successful.
exactly.
Yeah.
100%. I think it's not even about opinion, right? Like for them, they're basing their sort of decisions or like their opinions on historic data, right? Like they can look at the market and say, oh, this hasn't worked in the past. But then you're the one that's talking to the customer, and like you're the one that knows where the market is going to be a year from now, 2 years from now. And
Yeah.
if you're sure that there is going to be a disruption and like this works versus the other thing that you were doing previously, and you're standing your ground on that, then yeah, like by all means, like I think they will support you. And like if they don't, then again, like yeah, I think maybe you don't have the right investor, right? Like I think it's
Right.
very, very important to sort of spend enough time in building that right list of investors that you want to do outreach to.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you want to share with our audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. Yeah, I mean, I'll just talk about like my asks and my gifts, right? So, in terms of what I can give to the community, a few things, right? So, one, like I said, I've been an immigrant founder. I've traversed the immigration pathway, the ups and downs of it, seen pretty much everything. So, if there are immigrant founders that are listening to this that really need encouragement and like helping them understand their options when it comes to immigration, and honestly, just any sort of encouragement, even if it's just a sounding board or even a founder friend who's just like a therapist for you, please like definitely reach out. Like I'm happy to help and guide. Second one is, like I said, we've been very fortunate to receive numerous grants from the government, including the SBIR phase one, phase two, and more. So if there are people that need advice on that, or like just talk about my experience, I'm happy to do that. Um, and yeah, and the last one that I want to give is just product development advice, right? Like I said, I've been on the ground in Shenzhen, China for a couple of years, built very strong relationships with manufacturers. I know the do's and don'ts of manufacturing now, having seen it happen at ground zero. So if there are people, especially in hardware, that need sort of advice or assistance with manufacturing, with product development, they can definitely reach out to me. And then in terms of asks, a couple of things. First one is on the product front, like we're actually launching our beta for the MilkSense app, mobile app, live across both the Apple and Android app stores right now. It's
Okay.
basically an app that can help moms track their breastfeeding, breast pumping, and bottle feeding sessions, and provide them with some powerful analytics. So if you know any new or expecting moms in your circle, like please share our app with them,
Okay.
and you can find the app on our website, which is wearlilu.com. That's wearlilu.com. And then the second one is we are actively raising a seed round. So after being very capital efficient and like in our cocoon, and um, we're now sort of breaking our cocoon open, and like we're ready to fly now, having validated our technology,
Mhm.
and we have this exciting product roadmap. But in order to launch these products and scale them, we are raising a seed round from investors, from VC. So if you know any active investors that are investing in the women's health FemTech space that would like to talk to us, a referral or an introduction would be incredibly helpful. And my email is Sujay at wearlilu. That's my first name, Sujay at wearlilu.com. So if anybody wants to get in touch, they can do so directly at my email.
That was fantastic. I love the ask and give approach here.
Yeah,
So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. And maybe we'll have you on the show again in the future. And so we can talk more. There's just
I
too
would love
much
that.
to unpack in one
There's
episode.
too much. I know it's been 8 years. If I obviously couldn't sum all of that in like a 20-minute interview, but thank you so much for this incredible opportunity, this incredible platform. I love what you're doing. I love the show. And again, if there's I can think of maybe 10 other entrepreneurs that I would love to sort of refer you to be on this show. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity on this platform to share my story. Yeah, if there's anything I can do
On my
to
way.
help others, inspire others, yeah, it's an incredibly fortunate position for me to be in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next episode of Health Innovators.